Hello everyone. Today on Migraine Rescue, we're going to talk about common versus uncommon food triggers for migraines. And today I'm joined by Dr. Laura Bellis. So we've all, I think every migraine sufferer is well aware that foods can trigger migraine attacks. When we go to the doctor, whether it's our neurologist or a GP, at least with my experience, I was told the same thing. Avoid cheese, avoid chocolate, maybe avoid coffee or don't avoid coffee, avoid red wine specifically, anything that's sort of aged, whether it's a meat or, again, cheese. But I know being in the realm that I'm in, there's also these uncommon food triggers that we can touch on that cause IgG responses and your body just doesn't react well to them. So maybe you could go over the difference between why are those food triggers considered common and you're getting told to avoid them? And then what would be the uncommon food triggers?
Yeah, so I think you're right. A lot of people are aware of that classic food trigger list. All of those foods that you mentioned or food categories contain a compound called tyramine, which is a molecule that can actually trigger, for lack of a better word, like an inflammation type response in the body.
Okay.
Similar in some ways to like an allergy, a histamine response. Things kind of get elevated, and then of course it can actually just spark that onset of a migraine.
Okay.
So tyramine is contained in, let's just say, aged or sort of fermented type foods. So coffee is sort of one of those maybe nots.
Okay.
But the wine, red wine, aged cheese, any sort of processed or cured meats, very, very high on that list.
Would stuff like kimchi, do those aged foods have a negative effect? I know they're considered a health food, but should you avoid them?
So they are fermented, so they do actually cause a little bit of an elevated histamine response in some people, meaning it sometimes can lead to a migraine if you're more sensitive.
Okay, so not everything is good for everybody.
No, that's right.
So what is all this stuff, and depending on who's watching, I know some people have heard of I'm intolerant to, so you're not allergic to, but I'm intolerant to. What is the idea of uncommon food triggers or the IgG response?
Right, so the IgG response is what we call a food sensitivity. It's a type of allergic reaction that's not instant. Mm-hmm. So if you have an anaphylactic allergy to peanuts, for example, you carry your EpiPen, it's an instant response if you eat peanuts. If you have an IgG or a delayed response or a food sensitivity, as you mentioned, let's say eggs or wheat products, you can feel a symptom a day or 2 or even 3 days after from that one incident of eating eggs.
Really? So I know we're talking about uncommon food triggers, but what are the common, uncommon food triggers that you've seen? So actually first, how do we find out what our uncommon food trigger would be? So is it like a diary? I know a lot of migraine sufferers are told, write down everything you eat, but that can get, in my mind, complicated when you have 10 or 20 different options and you're like, was it this thing? Was it this thing? And it can take years to figure out, I guess, what that uncommon trigger is.
Absolutely. It's so complicated when you're trying to create a food diary to find out the answer. You can, and if those viewers out there are wanting to try that first, I recommend keeping all of your diet the same, as difficult as that is, and changing one variable at a time, one food or one vegetable with one of your meals. Otherwise, you're right, it's chaos. How do you know what's causing what?
Is there something that's easier, like a test?
Yes. So, of course, I don't like to guess. I really like to hone in on what's specifically causing your symptoms over somebody else, and that's done through an IgG blood test. Okay,
and they can go to, I'm assuming like most tests, they have to go to a licensed practitioner?
That's right. Functional medicine practitioner or a naturopathic doctor will be able to do that test, either finger prick or a small blood draw. You can test over 200 foods, including other additives to foods, which sometimes can be an unknown trigger, and people are pulling out their hair trying to figure out what's causing it.
Okay, and what I was going to ask before I stepped back for a second was, what are the common, uncommon food triggers?
Yeah, so the top 5 food sensitivities or things that may come up in an IgG test would be wheat, dairy, eggs, corn, and soy.
Okay.
Say those back to me.
Wheat, eggs, dairy, corn, and soy.
That's right.
And I know when I started cleaning up my diet, one of the things that was very difficult for me is I thought I was eating clean, like I'm being soy free, I'm being corn free, I'm being wheat free.
Yep.
But a lot of these health foods or gluten free foods were latent with some of those materials. So what is your recommendation, just to completely avoid, just eat whole foods, like just avoid all those ones? Or like would a gluten, so I know you say avoiding wheat, is that all wheat? Is that considered even like the organic wheats, or
Yes. So if wheat comes up, the test is a little bit more specific than that. It will give us some breakdown products as well. But in general, wheat is probably the most common. So I would avoid all wheat products. That doesn't mean all gluten. It just means all wheat.
Okay. And then soy would be the same thing, corn, dairy.
That's right. So try that for a little bit first, those top 5. See how you feel. But you do want to make sure you're giving yourself enough time, 2 or 3 weeks, to say, okay, have I had a decrease in my migraines? Yes, no. And if not, then it actually makes a lot of sense to go ahead with a test.
So if you guys are like me, one thing I don't ever want to have is a life sentence to something.
Yes.
So if I do an IgG test and all this stuff pops up, is that it? Am I done forever? Or are there things that we can do to make those no longer a trigger?
Really good point. And a lot of times patients will be like, do I have to avoid this for the rest of my life? The reason why some of us are sensitive to some foods is we do have a gut issue. So there's a potentially leaky gut situation where food molecules are passing through, causing a migraine, causing some sort of pain. Is it correctable? Yes, with working with a practitioner. In many cases, we can either reduce or eliminate that sensitivity altogether.
So, I guess I like to do this at the end of everything, is like, what can people do at home right now? So, not to say that you have to cut out all these common, uncommon.
No.
But let's say they can't run and get a test done. Is there any negative for people cutting out those foods if they just want to try it?
Absolutely not. There's a lot of value in reducing those foods, but you do want to make sure that you're incorporating enough of a balanced diet with the foods that you have left. So if you eat a lot of wheat and dairy and eggs, replace those foods with healthier sources of lean protein, fruits and vegetables to support you throughout the day.
Okay. And is there anything you can recommend, as much as we're going to talk about this, I think, in another video, what can people do to start getting their stomach to working a little bit better? If you think the gut is an issue, is there any favorite foods you have that can help heal it? Is there any sort of supplementation they can do? Is there meal timing? Like what?
Yeah, that's a big question, because a lot of times people will run to probiotics or fermented foods or glutamine, but it really is individual. Some guts are not ready for that, and you sometimes want to clean the slate first, decrease that inflammation before going in and starting the healing process.
Okay. One thing I tried in my life, maybe you can tell me if I'm doing it right or not, is I noticed that my digestion was a little off. I was getting gas and bloating.
Yes.
And I found, since putting in this tool, my migraine attacks have actually reduced, was apple cider vinegar before every meal. So I put a little bit into water. Is there any validity to that, or?
Some people react negatively to apple cider, but a lot of people react positively.
Okay.
You made me reminded me of potentially a good quality whole full spectrum digestive enzyme can help a lot of people.
Oh, right.
Break down foods, break down those potential food triggers into things your body can absorb without causing a reaction.
Okay. So there you have it, guys. I guess as a summation, again, so there's some foods that everyone knows causes migraines. They're the hidden ones that you can have that are probably unique to you. I guess, as you're saying, the best way to figure those out is to do some testing. Food journals are useful, but they can take some time to be effective. And if it is a cause, you probably have some sort of gut issue that you can work on with a professional. And then I guess as a start, you can start using a full spectrum digestive enzyme or something like apple cider vinegar. So thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.